Justice Minister accuses Bertie AHERN of a dangerous error of judgment in his Arbor Hill speech. Michael Lowry's elections director says he will hold his seat despite a damaged reputation. Rebel leader warns UN, remove Rwandan refugees from Zaire or we will do it for you. Good evening. The Minister for Justice has accused the Fianna Fáil leader, Mr AHERN, of echoing Gerry Adams in his criticism of the government's handling of the peace process in the north. Mrs Owen was responding to a speech by Mr AHERN at Fianna Fáil's annual commemoration of the Easter Rising at Arbor Hill today. The Minister said Mr AHERN was making a dangerous error of judgment by consciously or unconsciously providing excuses for the gunmen and bombers.
Bertie Ahern's speech at Arbor Hill has triggered a full-scale war of words over the government's handling of the peace process. With just 4 days to go to the northern election, Mr Ahern refused to advise the electorate on how they should vote. This was in contrast to the Taoiseach's decision to describe a vote for Sinn Féin as a vote for violence. Instead, Mr Ahern issued a broadside against John Bruton and his handling of the peace process. He said the Taoiseach had allowed the vision of peace to falter because of what he called a lack of passionate conviction and firm guidance, and that the government had allowed the British off the hook in the aftermath of the IRA ceasefire.
The Taoiseach permitted a fatal prevarication by the British, using the red herring of decommissioning. He refused to meet the leaders of Northern nationalism together to discuss the difficulties. And despite much honest endeavour which we supported, the peace was lost.
But in a fierce response, Norah Owen this evening said he was consciously or unconsciously providing excuses for gunmen and bombers. The remarks, she said, displayed scant understanding of the serious issues at stake for this state and the safety of its people, and that Mr Ahern's criticisms echoed almost word for word those of Gerry Adams. Mr Ahern is, however, adamant that the Taoiseach was wrong on the decommissioning issue.
The Taoiseach signed up to the Washington Tree Clause. That was a try-on by the British, and subsequently well proved that it was a try-on. And that delayed all of that year. So, you know, that 1995, before there was any breakdown in violence, I'm afraid the blame responsibility on that particular event lies fair and squarely with him.
A 12-year-old boy is in hospital in Belfast after being hit by a plastic bullet in Lurgan last night, apparently fired by a British soldier. The boy is being treated for an eye wound. Meanwhile, after another parade was diverted by police in the Ormeau Road area of Belfast, the chairman of the Parade's Commission has urged the Orange Order to open formal talks about controversial marches this summer.
The Lurgan incident is still being investigated. The IUC say a crowd threw stones and other missiles at a military foot patrol in the Antrim Road area. But according to Sinn Féin, there was no rioting. They claimed the 12-year-old boy was among a group who'd gone to collect wood for a fire in a field and had been running away from the soldiers when one of them fired a plastic bullet. The boy was wounded in the eye and is being treated at the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast. A youth is in the same hospital after being seriously injured in a confrontation between Loyalist and Nationalist youths in the centre of Portadown. He was one of 2 people who received head injuries during the disturbances early this morning. Meanwhile, in South Belfast, police prevented an orange parade from entering the mainly nationalist Lower Ormeau area, where residents have objected to such marches. The Orangemen held a religious service in front of police lines on the Ormeau Bridge. Members of the newly formed Parades Commission observed the protest. Afterwards, the chairman said he hoped the Orange Order would respond to their request for a meeting to discuss the parades issue, which will be one of the main issues facing the new Northern Secretary after the British election.
Well, I'm sure that the new Secretary of State will want to give priority to ensuring that we have a peaceful marching season, and I, as chairman of the Parades Commission, and my colleagues will want to work very closely with the Secretary of State to try and ensure that.
The British Labour Party has warned that if elected to government, its handling of marches in the north will be based on upholding the rule of law. Labour's northern spokeswoman, MOWLAM, told RTE News she will ensure that any legally binding decisions on marches will be carried out.
MOWLAM, Labour's northern spokeswoman, is on her way to Northern Ireland.
You stick this one up too?
If Labour wins the election, she could be going back as Northern Secretary. One of the first problems she's likely to be faced with will be the confrontations of the marching season and the flashpoint of Drumcree. She says she'll ensure the provisions of the recent North report on the conduct of marches will be put on a statutory basis. Her tone is hard line.
Our position will be based on the rule of law, and that the upholding of the rule of law is crucial.
What does that mean? You seal off the town and don't allow orange men to come in from outside?
That means that when you make a decision, and that is the decision that by law should be followed, we will make sure that it is followed.
MOWLAM has been an MP since 1983. She's as New Labour as they come and one of Tony Blair's closest political allies.
You'll be the first woman Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. Does that make any difference?
To me, no. To others, possibly.
In what way?
Well, it is new, it is different, and when something is different, it is always slightly challenging.
The IRA has said it planted the bomb which exploded near the M6 motorway outside Birmingham on Friday. Road and rail traffic in the English Midlands were extensively disrupted. A third man has been arrested in connection with the arson attack on St Nicholas's Catholic Church in Carrickfergus on Friday night. 2 others are expected to appear in court at Newton Abbey in the morning. Michael Lowry's